This week on Motor Week, Richard Hammond drives Saab's new addition to its range, the 9.5 Estate. Ginny Buckley has a special report from California, where she undertakes one of the world's toughest off-road adventures, the Rubicon Trail. Goffey reports on the reincarnation of the Austin Maestro. And Howard Stableford looks at the technology that went into building the new Rover 75.
Now that is the kind of Saab that I want. It's got guns, which is a plus, and it's got jets, which is another. Mind you, it probably costs about 500 million quid, which is quite a lot, even on finance. It's ironic that just as Saab's #1 competitor Volvo choose to launch the S80 as a saloon only, there is no estate, Saab make a return to the load-lugging sector after an absence of 20 years with a 9.5 Estate. Mind you, I might still get to have a go in the jet version because Saab chose to launch their new estate at RAF Leeming. Saab say that they've designed the car with an eye to practicality before pure image, but despite that, I think it looks fantastic. They're all new pillars from the rear passenger door back, but the sloping C-pillar, well, that's typically Saab. And it also gives the 9.5 quite a sporty, rakish look, which is just as well, because size-wise, the 9.5 Estate falls somewhere between the tiny little sporting estates, the one where you have to trade in the Retriever for a Jack Russell to fit the dog in the back, and the full-blown load luggers. There are some nice luxury touches too, but those as well are designed with an eye to practicality first. For instance, these roof rails, they're not an adornment, they are real. They will support a load if you find that the boot space isn't enough. And there are some nice touches in the boot space. Open the tailgate, these red lights at the top are a repeater of the tail lights, which means if you're loading at night and you obscure them, people can see you, you're safer. And these white lights are here to illuminate the whole of the load area, make sure you don't trip over anything or step in a puddle. So, on the road is the big Swede, a turnip. Saab make no wild claims about the 9.5 Estate being a sports car, but they do point out that they spent a lot of time and a lot of effort making it handle as well as a saloon car on the road, and it's time well spent, because it does. It's very poised on the road, it's actually a very pleasurable drive. There's none of the boomy noise that's usually associated with an estate car either, as a result of the big space at the back. It's very well insulated from that. It's available from launch with two engines, the 2-litre and the 2.3. That's 150 and 170 brake horsepower. Both are Saab's light pressure turbos. Very soon it'll be joined by the 3-litre V6, that's an asymmetric twin turbo, and should make it a bit of a stonker. Now, I have said this before, but that's never stopped me from saying anything again, so I shall. Saab, for me, will always be associated with bearded people in goat wool jerseys whose diet means, well, put it this way, you wouldn't want to share a car with them on the school run in the morning. Vegetarians. I'm not being cruel to Saab when I say this, and it's certainly not a reflection on their current range. It's simply that when I was at school, the Saabs I remember from them were all kind of beige, or maybe orange, and blobby in shape. And in updating the childhood memories of the likes of me, Saab do have a bit of a problem in that most of the cars from then are still around today. Building a car that lasts forever can be a bit of a double-edged sword for a manufacturer. It's great to boast about the fact that cars go on for millions of miles, but anybody trying to sell a product whose lifespan is measured in millennia faces a bit of a problem in persuading people to come back and buy another one. That's why British Leyland invented the concept of built-in obsolescence. Sell somebody a car that's good for 40,000 miles, and then sell them another, and another and another. You'd need carbon dating to pinpoint the original birth date of some of the Saabs still around today. But back to the present. Life is about compromises, ask any American president, and the Saab 9.5 Estate compromises very well. It mixes the better qualities of a sporty estate with the genuine practicality of its more cumbersome competitors. OK, as a drive, it doesn't tear the ground up, but there won't be any skins left on rice puddings, and it does drive much like a saloon. At a shade under £24,000 for the 2-litre engine version and a shade under £27,000 for the 2.3, it competes very well against the likes of Audi, BMW and Volvo, the immediate competitors, on price, as it does on specification. But if you are looking for performance in a small, sporty estate, then I'd say take a look at something like Subaru's Legacy, which is more powerful, it's actually cheaper in some instances, and of course it does have the advantage of that permanent four-wheel drive. But if you really want to go Swedish, then the Saab 9.5 Estate is definitely worth a look.
How long do most car manufacturers keep a model in production? Well, if they're American or Japanese, between 5 and 7 years. Obviously, some manufacturers keep things going longer. The Mini's been going 40 years and the Beetle 50 years. But how come the Maestro is still being built 20 years on? Well, the answer, believe it or not, lies in Bulgaria. It all started when the Bulgarian government decided they wanted a national car. The country had become independent. Rover found a factory, trained up staff, put in the tools and generally spent around £20 million on a plan to build the Maestro there from CKD, that's completely knocked down kits. But at the 11th hour, things went wrong. The Bulgarians signed a deal with Skoda, there were dark stories of bribery and corruption, and Rover pulled out. And that left a large number of kits lying around, just waiting for someone to assemble. So, Ian, how come you're screwing Maestro kits together here in Ledbury?
Well, we bought the kits from Rover in 1997, May 97, and converted them from left-hand drive to right-hand drive. We've been selling them to the public ever since.
And is it a difficult car to put together?
We're very, very fortunate you couldn't wish to assemble a simpler car. It's quite straightforward.
And they look slightly different to the Maestros I remember. Why is that?
Yeah, it was a Bulgarian market spec. It's a clubman, really, without a sunroof.
Now, when you build the cars from the kits, you're converting them from left-hand drive to right-hand drive, but there's some interest in the left-hand drive models.
Well, we've actually sold left hookers in the last few weeks for people to go into France and Spain because they're left-hand drive already.
And you're doing the vans as well?
Well, the vans are the 500, same again, 1.3 5-speed petrol, all in white.
Now, I remember the Maestro launch in Spain. The top-of-the-range versions had a voice synthesizer that told you to put on your seatbelt and take off the handbrake. Now, we came down a mountain road, I hit a patch of oil, skidded into the side of the mountain, smashed the car very hard and turned it on its roof, and we skated down the road with cascading glass and shrieking metal. Came to rest, hanging in our seatbelts. There was a little silence and a voice said, "Low oil pressure." Let's hope it doesn't happen for the reunion of the Maestro. It's actually very useful to drive the Maestro because it reminds you just how far car designers come in the last 10 or 15 years. When the Maestro was launched, I thought it was very underrated. It got an image as an old man's car. You used to see them smoking pipes with hats on in front of you at a stolid 45 miles an hour, no faster. But in fact, there were some very quick Maestro variants. I remember the MG Maestro Turbo that was a real road burner, a lot quicker than a Golf GTI 16 valve, for instance, but somehow never quite had the same image. For 5,000 quid today, it's exceptional value for money. 5-speed gearbox, no power steering, but the steering isn't too bad. Very sparse and Spartan plastic dash layout, but again, what do you want for the money? £5,000, of course, is not a lot for a brand new car. The only other new car on sale in the UK for a similar price is the Perdua Nipah, a Malaysian copy of an old Daihatsu, and not frightfully desirable. So the Maestro makes quite a lot of sense compared to other new car prices. However, £5,000 will buy you quite a lot on the used car market. It would be silly to pretend that the Maestro is the same as a brand new current car. It is starting to show its age. And for £5,000, you could buy a pretty good second-hand car instead. Nevertheless, it is brand new. A lot of people in this country did buy Maestros first time round, and it could be coming up for retirement. You might think that a truly British car like this, and let's face it, there aren't many of them, would be the one to see you out.
Coming up after the break, a special report from California where Ginny Buckley travelled the Rubicon Trail, one of the world's toughest off-road courses. And Howard Stableford reports from Rover's factory on the process used to strengthen the structure of their latest award-winning model, the 75.
One of the elements that the design team for the new Rover 75 are particularly proud of is the stiffness of the body shell. It's 2.5 times stiffer than the Rover 600 series. And for these improvements, they took the BMW 5 series as their benchmark. Well, to find out exactly what all that means, here's Martin Walker from the body structure team. Hiya. Body stiffness, what does it mean?
Body stiffness, we can think about that in two ways. First of all, the global stiffness of the body structure and the way in which it can actually resist forces that are looking to try and twist it or bend it. The forces you might get from running over a bump in the road. And we can also think about the local stiffness effects, which is really trying to get areas where the engine mounts fit or where the chassis fits to be as stiff as possible so that there's no creaking or rattling as a result.
Does it improve the drive performance as well to have a really stiff body and chassis?
Having a stiff body allows the chassis to behave properly because the chassis is reacting all its loads against a very stiff structure rather than against something that might actually move itself. You can see either side of the spare wheel well, we have what we call the rear longitudinals, which is a box section about 100 millimeters square, which runs underneath there and then runs and dives out into this section just underneath the rear door. This section then runs along underneath the doors, and as it comes up to the front of the car, so again it dives back into the dash area, and that then comes forward into the front longitudinals, similar section sizes, forming a very stiff underframe on which we can then mount the upper structure.
Okay, so the driver of the new 75 will notice what, particularly about the stiffness of the handling? How will they notice the improvements?
I think they will notice the improvements in its wind noise improvement, the refinement, if you like, throughout the vehicle. Absence of squeaks and rattles, because a stiff body structure isn't going to start any of the other components that attach to it moving relative to each other and therefore starting a squeak or a rattle.
Rover's new 75 has been named Car of the Year by What Car magazine. This came as a surprise to some motoring journalists who issued mixed reports on Rover's new model following a test of their prototype before the car was officially launched earlier this month. The 75 also picked up the award for Best Compact Executive Car. You can see how other nominees got on in a Motor Week special on next week's programme. The 500,000th Vectra to be produced at Vauxhall's Luton plant rolls off the assembly line this week, just weeks before the new model goes on sale in mid-March. The Vectra went on sale in October '95. Since then it has become the UK's 4th best-selling car in 1998 and the best-selling car in its class for private buyers. Volkswagen has announced that its new smallest car, the Lupo, will be priced from just $7,890 on the road when it goes on sale in the UK in April. The range will include a choice of 3 engines for the Lupo, including a 1-litre, 75 brake horsepower 1.4-litre and a 1.7-litre diesel version. Finally this week, Peugeot will unveil the revised 406 at the forthcoming Geneva Motor Show. These exclusive pictures show the revised 406, which has been redesigned, including a higher and longer bonnet at the front of the car, and modifications to the boot lid, the zero-play bumper, and the one-piece rear light unit. You also get revised dash as well. The new 406 will see the first application of the 2-litre 16-valve petrol engine, developing 137 brake horsepower. You can see a special report on this revised 406 and other cars launched at this year's Geneva Motor Show, which Motor Week will cover exclusively in programmes in 2 weeks' time on the 18th and the 25th of March.
Now what you're about to see is another one of those things that could only happen in America. Having a fascination for this kind of impassable terrain, land that looks like it comes from another planet, is quite one thing. Deciding that for kicks, you're going to drive straight over it is another. But that's exactly what a group of Jeep enthusiasts decided 45 years ago. They saw this impassable terrain as a challenge, and they felt sure that their Hardy Willis Jeeps could cross it no problems. They created the very first Jeepers Jamboree, a rather curious affair in which Jeep owners pay for the privilege of hammering their own vehicles over rocks, through mud and along terrifying passes in this Jeep utopia known as Rubicon Springs. And there is absolutely no shortage of Jeepers wanting to take up that challenge. What started off as a fairly modest affair with just a few vehicles has now grown into a huge event attracting people from all over the world. Entry now is so popular that it's decided via a kind of lottery system. And guess who's managed to bag a winning ticket? Of course, you can't take part in the biggest and the baddest Jeep Jamboree without having your very own Jeep to drive in. And this one is mine. It's going to get me through the next couple of days, hopefully. It's a 4-litre Jeep Wrangler, and it's just like the ones that you'll find cruising down the good old King's Road. There are no special modifications on this vehicle at all. In fact, the president of Chrysler is adamant that any vehicle that Chrysler produce bearing the Jeep badge has to be capable of completing the Rubicon Trail in one piece. Now, about that Rubicon Trail. Off-road trails are rated from 1 to 10. 1 is, yes, the easiest, and there are plenty of those. But there is only 110, and it's the Rubicon here in California. It may only be 22 miles long, but it's 22 miles that takes people to places roads just don't want them to go to. Now, I've been warned that this path is a boulder-infested, differential-smashing, kidney-bruising, wheel-bending path to nowhere. In short, it's a Jeep heaven, and I've always been a girl who's game, so here goes. The trail has all the perfect ingredients. You never know what's around the corner. There's breathtaking scenery, and it certainly challenges your driving skills. A comforting thought as I approach the first tricky bit of the day is my trusty copy of Mark A. Smith's Guide to Safe, Common Sense Off-Road Driving. What I want to know is, where's the common sense in driving through all of this lot instead of round it? Still, I've been assured by the expert that there's a simple technique to rock driving. You need low gearing, a supple suspension, nerves of steel, and a very understanding bank manager.
All right, up forward, Jake, cut, that's me.
If you were one of these people that thought to get excited behind the wheel, what you need is speed, forget it. This is absolutely thrilling, but speed has got no place here. You want the lowest gear possible. You chug along with just the occasional delicate touch on the accelerator. And you never, ever use the clutch, no matter how tempting it is. Just finished my first day on the Rubicon Trail. We've been driving for 13 hours. I'm absolutely exhausted. And I don't think I've been this dirty since I was about 7. Still, never mind, because I've got a night in a tent and a bath in an icy cold lake to look forward to. Some girls get all the luck, don't they? The Rubicon Trail is renowned for the beauty and the toughness of its terrain. But it's also just as renowned for the huge party that takes place every year over at the Rubicon Springs camping spot. And as the event has grown over the years into a huge production, so has the supporting cast.
Hi, I'm Whitey McKnight, and I'm running the bar at the Rubicon Springs bar, campground bar. And Jeeps get in here normally about 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and we have a band that comes and plays.
What do you think is special about the Rubicon Trail?
Oh, it's I believe it's the most difficult trail, and it's 9 hours to go 9 miles. And once people get here, they treat them like gold. They feed them really well. And the cocktails are pretty adequate.
Cool. I know the beer's cold.
The beers are cold. This is the coldest beer this side of Lake Tahoe.
What's your job on the trail? Because you have a special job, don't you?
Trail guide or rock roller today. Just walking along, getting rock stacked in so everybody can make it through.
And what do you do with all the tricky points? Do you guide people through?
We try to keep them on top of the rocks.
Have you ever had anybody that didn't stay on top of the rocks?
Oh yeah, now and then.
Go on, tell us, what's the worst, who's the worst driver you've ever had? Can you remember?
Oh, we've had some doozies, that's for sure. But I'm not going to name any names, okay?
Has anybody ever rolled a Jeep?
Oh yeah, it does happen, but that's why we basically, we put an emphasis on safety, okay? And that's why we want everybody to wear their safety belts or whatever. If something does happen, that safety belt will work.
As you settle your aching bones down by the campfire with half a cow to chew on and of course the obligatory bottle of beer, it's the perfect time to unwind and listen to the day's tall tales. And believe me, there are plenty of those. Just when you find it's all over and you're winding down on the final stretch, comes the toughest part of the trail, Cadillac Hill. Well, this is it. We've reached the end of the Rubicon Trail and it is so beautiful here. I can't believe we've just driven through that valley. It's only 10 miles long, but it's taken us a day and a half to travel through it. And I tell you, it's not for the faint-hearted.